from Star Studios in Denison, Texas, this is Coffee with a Sign Painter, a weekly podcast hosted by sign painter Sean Starr that consists of interviews with other sign painters and some of the customers and characters Sean comes across while running his studio.
Hello, welcome back to Coffee with a Sign Painter. This week's episode, I'm talking with Clark Vogeler from the Toadies. The Toadies reached out to me last year and asked me if I would be willing to create an original piece that could serve as the cover art of their next album, and so that's what I did. And the album comes out September 19th of 2015. It's called Heretics, and so this is my conversation with Clark on how some of that came about, and some weird little things that came up with our paths crossing years ago and not knowing it until now. And so interesting little interview, and for those of you that are Toadies fans, this should be a nice treat. So here we go. This is my interview with Clark from the Toadies. So you're up in Michigan, huh?
I'm in Michigan for the day.
Okay, I was looking at y'all's concert schedule. It's like, holy cow, you got a lot going on right now.
Yeah, we just started the second leg of this tour, and we are out for another 5.5 weeks, I think.
Wow. Okay.
Straight through.
And then you crash and burn, I'm guessing.
I get a couple weeks to crash and burn, then we come back to Texas and we do the festival in September.
Yeah. Okay, and that's when you're releasing the new Heretics album, right?
That's right. It comes out in the middle of September, and then we're going to be touring on that. It's a little bit in October, and then November is going to be the real tour for that album.
Okay, all right. So what have you been up to besides all of this touring?
I got 10 days off that ended just a few days ago, and I went back to Guerneville, California, where my girl and I moved.
Okay.
About 8 months ago, a little small town, and so it just now warmed up, and so I've spent all week outdoors, out on the river, swimming or hiking or kayaking. I really had to cram all my summer into 10 days before I come back and get on this bus.
Yeah, wow. So that's up in Northern California, right?
It is about 2 hours north of San Francisco.
Okay, yeah, I remember you sending me some photos. It looked gorgeous.
Oh, that's the most beautiful place I've seen. Yeah, we drove through it once years ago. We're like, we need to come back here and live here, so we have. Very
cool. Okay, so let's talk about the new album.
All right.
As some of the listeners know, I was the one who designed and painted the cover art, which
That was right.
Very grateful that you guys thought of me to include me in that. That was a really neat thing to do.
I mean, having you on board for this, it all kind of fell together just perfectly. And the fact that you were interested and excited to do it just told us it was the right way to go. But yeah, so you made this beautiful cover for this album that I feel like, even just visually, sets out, it kind of evokes the tone and the feeling of the music on the album for us. Yeah,
and now that you guys have released some teasers with some of the clips from the album, I guess it's okay to reveal that it's more of a acoustic type approach to some of your classic songs as well as a few new ones in there. Is that right?
That's completely accurate. It's like, on one hand, it's quieter than the older Toadies albums, but it's not fully stripped. It's stripped down and kind of dressed up again. But any way you look at it, it's not big, loud, distorted guitars like the old stuff. So to simplify it is kind of like an acoustic album. I barely play any guitar on the record. It's lots of piano and electric piano, and there's banjo and mandolin and lots of acoustic guitars and percussion. And it's a much more organic, less loud rock album.
How do you think hardcore Toadies fans are going to embrace that? I know you guys have been playing a lot of that vibe in some of your live shows. Do you think that's going to upset some of the hardcore fans?
You know what? I mean, that really is the big question mark with this whole album. We really don't know. It's, we have, like you mentioned, we have been doing once a year for the last several years. We do like kind of an acoustic set at our festival, and it is kind of stripped down like this with a electric piano, and our singer Vaden does play mandolin and acoustic guitars. But the album is kind of like another step further from there, because there's lots of other kind of sounds and textures on there that are atypical for a Toadies record. And when we decided to do it, we just wanted to do it because we enjoyed playing in this setup. It kind of freed us from big, loud bar chords through a Marshall half stack. And there's a whole world of music outside of that parameter. And so it's just kind of fun for us to play some new sounds and use some new textures and new vibes in our music. And our singer Vaden, I mean, this is kind of a prevailing theory with all of us, that if you have a good song, it will sound good whether or not it's on loud electric guitar or acoustic guitar or piano or whatever. If it's a good song, it'll translate. And so we kind of wanted to put our songs to the test to see if they'll hold up like that.
Yeah, I think it was Jimmy Page I read years ago. I think he was one who said that if you write a good song, it'll sound great on an acoustic guitar.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of his acoustic stuff, the Mellow or Zeppelin stuff is some of my favorite.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be all big, loud, bluesy chords.
Right.
Especially since we're all getting a little older,
Shh, don't say that.
We're not in our 20s anymore. We'll leave it at that. But, really, the response of the Toadies audience per se is, it remains to be seen, but we're optimistic that they'll come with us on this whole journey.
Well, and I think it's awesome that you guys are branching out, because I think there's a lot of bands and artists that when they get any kind of success, they're so afraid of stepping out of that box that they just stay in that whole, thing the rest of their career, because they're just so afraid that they're not going to get accepted with anything else. So, hats off to you guys.
And yeah, thank you very much. And as an artist, I don't think you're certainly not growing if you stay within that comfort zone. I was just reading a few weeks ago, I can't remember who it was, but it was an artist was saying, if you are not continually pushing outside of your comfort zone just a little bit, then you're never going to grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of bands, maybe their audiences don't want them to grow. A lot of audiences want to hear those songs that they know from way back, and our audience may be like that, but we've got a little more faith in them, and we hope they will. But this is kind of the first time for us to really branch out on a record outside of that comfort zone. And we pushed the sonics and things a little bit, but for the most part, all our records are louder rock records, and so it's definitely a change for us. But it's been fun change, welcome change.
Yeah, no, I'm digging the vibe a lot. You guys provided me with the rough demo before you guys had mastered it all, so I could listen to it when I was doing the design, and I love the vibe. I mean, I really love the heavy stuff that you guys got most well known for, but I really like the vibe of this record. I think even a little more in some ways.
Nice. Would you say that as you were working on the piece for the cover, you feel like the way you heard the music was filtered into the work you did?
Oh, absolutely. And there's one song in particular. It's not your song, but the rendition you've done of Blondie's Heart of Glass. Something about the groove that you guys have with that song on this record. I listened to that song obsessively while I was doing the design over and over, because it just had such a great groove.
Cool.
Yeah, so
it's kind of a weird song, that one, because when you hear the original, it's all up and kind of displaying, sounds like a happy song. But what we realized when we started working on it is, the lyrics are real sad, and we wanted to bring out that kind of part of the song that is maybe kind of hidden underneath this good time vibe in the original. But there's some sadness in there as well.
Oh yeah, the twist you guys put on it is very moody, and it's heavy. I like it a lot.
Cool. Thanks.
So I know when we first started talking, one thing that surfaced early on, and I've got to question you on it, is you are also a Smith/Morrissey fan, correct?
Big Smith fan, and a serious Morrissey fan too. But Smith, for me, it's in my DNA. I listened to it so much when I was, 14, 15, 16. It'll always be a part of it.
Isn't that funny? I mean, I know a lot of artists on many different different genres and niches, but it seems like so many of us were influenced by the Smiths and by Morrissey. I don't know. Why do you think that is? I mean, for those of us that have gone in the path of creative pursuits, why do you think they had such a big impact?
Gosh, I don't know, but I would say that for me, like the reason it was a moodier music than most people were playing during that time, and maybe those of us that kind of had introspective tendencies, that music really made a good soundtrack for what was going on in our heads. And maybe that's creative personality type that would enjoy those kinds of thoughts and feelings and lyrics and vibes. I really don't know, but for me, it's always been, and it's one of those bands where maybe your buddies don't all get it, and they might give you a little bit of flack for it, but nobody can, nothing really touched me musically during those most important formative years than their music.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting how universal it is. The TV show Psych, that main character Sean, he's always peppering Smiths and Morrissey, either lyrics or references throughout the show, and it's interesting because he, I was looking up some information on him to try and figure out what his deal was, and he grew up down in San Antonio around the same time. So I think there was like this oasis of like intellectualism and just how bold Morrissey was with just being himself, I think was just something that a lot of us attached to and were like, okay, I'm not completely crazy,
It's funny because I think that thing that we attached to is also the thing that put off the non-Smith fans. It really polarized people.
Yeah.
Maybe I like that about it.
Yeah, no, I think so. It drew the line in the sand, that's for sure.
It sure did.
So have you, you're obviously, the Toadies are like this kind of iconic Texas band. Are you guys all from Texas?
Now, I grew up in Garland. Our singer, Vaden, grew up in Fort Worth. Our bass player, Donnie, grew up in Sherman, which is that where you are now? Yeah,
that's just like 5 minutes south of Denison here.
Yeah, that's where our bass player is from. Now, our drummer grew up in Nebraska, but moved to Corpus Christi when he was like 18 or 19, I believe.
Okay.
And so, for the most part, we've all been Texas most of our lives.
So do you guys get crap sometimes when you go to other places? Like, do people even tease you about, because Texas has this there's this kind of bizarre perception, at least in the United States, outside of Texas, of what Texas is, which is not even close to what Texas is.
True. Well, I remember this story that happened just before I joined the band in '96, where the band was on tour, and I think they were in Virginia, and they got pulled over by some cops, at 11 o'clock at night on the day off. They're driving up the coast to play in New York or something, and the police officer said, "I see your Texas plates, so where are the guns?" And they're like, "Well, what guns?" They're like, "Where are the guns? We know you have guns." They're like, "We don't have any guns. Where are the drugs? Where are the guns? We know you're from Texas. Where are they?"
Wow.
So there's been a little bit of that.
Should write a song about that.
There is a song in there for sure. But the being from Texas thing seemed to have changed during the Bush administration. I remember, back in the early 90s, people if you're far away from Texas, they just thought Texas was like the TV show Dallas, where they thought we all wore cowboy hats and rode horses all the time.
Right.
But after, the Bush presidencies, it seemed to take on a different kind of, meaning to people. And I guess they figure we're all conservative rednecks, or I don't really know. But especially when you go to England, Texas seems like a really far away place.
Yeah.
To those people, and they have no real conception of what it is. But it just depends on who you're talking to. Some people, it seems like around the world there is a fascination with Texas.
Yeah.
But that, like I said, that kind of their impression of it has changed. And I don't really know what the consensus is now at this point. I don't even know what my impression of Texas is. It's kind of complex.
Yeah, it's a weird mix. I'd moved out to the West Coast when I was in my early 20s and had been out there up until about, close to 4 years ago now. And it was kind of interesting coming back, after being over there so long. Because, especially leaving, South Texas to go first to Seattle in the, what was that, the early 90s, I guess, mid-90s? South Texas is a thing of its own. And I couldn't get out of there quick enough. But, it's interesting, though. You disconnect from it and you get wrapped up in other things. But, when Kaylee and I talked about, moving back over here, it's amazing how many little things that are unique to Texas that you're like, dang, I forgot about that. That's pretty cool. Even stuff like, like even stuff like, getting a margarita at a restaurant on a patio out in the summer heat, just kind of its own unique thing here and kind of cool.
Well, do you miss the West Coast at all? Any of that, the personalities or disposition of the people in those places? Oh,
yeah, for sure. I mean, we've got lots of friends still over there, and Kaylee and I fly over there a couple times a year and visit with everybody. The atmosphere for the type of work I do was really great there, but it was a little surprising. I thought when we moved the studio to Texas, I thought there would be kind of a disconnect and kind of a lack of understanding of what we do, and it was kind of the opposite, which was weird. We've been busier here now than we were when we were doing all that work in LA and San Francisco, but I think the great equalizer on a lot of this stuff culturally is the internet. If I was in San Antonio today versus growing up there in the 80s, it would be a totally different thing, because we had, like, even our access to music was, what's the name? There's a record store, I can't remember the name now, but there's a record store there, I think they're still there, that they always had the imports. So that's where you could go find new wave and punk and all of that, and it was like the only place in the whole city where you could find that stuff.
Imagine it's long gone now, huh?
Yeah, probably is. I can't even remember the name, but you had to dig for culture, when I was growing up there, whereas now, I mean, everything's so accessible, through the internet that it's probably not as challenging.
And I wonder, part of the thing for, like you say you had to dig for it and find it, when you found something that you really liked, it was extra special because you found it, not your buddies telling you about it, you didn't hear it on MTV or whatever. Like, you randomly found that artist.
Yeah.
And, it forged a permanent special connection with us then. And I wonder if younger kids get the same kind of thing out of music, because really it's just somebody's probably sending them a link to YouTube. No. I'm not saying they don't connect with music, but it's probably not as much of a personal connection.
Yeah, I don't think so. I was talking to a friend of mine about this a few months back, and we were talking about, when we kind of came of age, it was right at that point where vinyl was starting, to be replaced by cassettes and then eventually CDs. But when you actually got a record, and we were very broke growing up, so we would go down to the flea market and, you know, flip through records. But when you'd find like a really cool record and it had all the liner notes and all the artwork, and, you know, you'd really only see one photo of the band, which was, you know, usually on the inside or something. And I don't know, there was an intimacy with that, I think, that's lost now because of everything being available.
You know, the way I listen to music is totally different. You know, I was just like you. I think we all were back in that time. You get the album, you put it on the ground, on the floor, and you kind of stare at it while you listen to the music, and you pull over the liner notes. And like you said, you get that one photo, so you kind of have to draw all the background stories in your mind about what this band is from, where they come from, what they're about, between the photo and the music you hear. But I think that I'm probably like a lot of the younger kids these days, like, you know, these days I just need the song, really. Is that all I consume? I'll glance at the album, but it's a tiny little JPEG, you know?
Yeah, it's just like an identifier now, you know?
It is. It's like an emblem, a little icon.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. I mean, certainly the lost art of album art is gone. And the cool thing about this new Toadies album is we're doing it on vinyl, and because of the amount of songs we have, it's going to be a double album.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But we're still don't have. It's not a double gatefold open up with giant pictures in the middle. It's basically just it's a single sleeve. So that's kind of a good and a bad thing there.
Well, I don't have a record player anymore, but I'm going to get that on vinyl.
Oh, good. It'll look nice, you know, all bright and shiny on the cover.
Yeah, man. So this leads to another thing, since we're talking about music, that I kind of thought was hilarious and weird all at the same time, is when Kaylee and I went and saw you guys, and we were backstage at your show at Dia de los Toadies in Fort Worth. You and I started talking and realized that my brother and I had this really kind of like makeshift concept band in Austin back in the late 80s. And when we started talking about it, you had something interesting to say.
Yeah. I remember asking her, like, did you play music? Because I like to ask people that, and I'm surprised by the number of people that never had any music in their lives. You said, yeah, I did have a band, you know, in the 80s. What was the name of that band? You told me the band was called Napoleon Solo, and it immediately took back and put this, there was this, I had this ongoing relationship with your band just through the flyers you put up around town.
Hundreds of thousands of them, I think.
There were tons of them. There was something there in the images, and they were kind of cool and evolved for a flyer. And there was people doing really cool flyers in the 80s. I remember there was a big scene around Dallas, people doing cool stuff. But I had just moved to Austin. I was 18, and it's kind of a time when you're looking around the world going, what are the things that I like?
Right.
And there was something about these flyers drew me in, and I think maybe at first I was mad. I was like, look, they're everywhere. They don't even say anything but the band name. What is the problem? But, you know, as it continued on, and they kept coming out, and they were cool-looking flyers, and they were kind of mysterious. There's definitely some mystery about the whole campaign. And then one day, some posters showed up and they had a date on it. That was the first time. Before it had only been the name and these interesting images. And then it said Cage Club, like Thursday, July 8th. And I was like, well, now I got to go. I've been looking at these flyers for months now. I've got to find out what this band was like. And I think I went down to the show by myself and saw your band play in 1987.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh, that's pretty cool for, you know, because like I said, I was half mad at you for you know, leading me on this mysterious journey to try to understand what is this campaign about. But I think that the real interesting thing, though, is that I responded to your art in 1987, and I responded to your art again a year ago. Can I get into briefly how I found you last year?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, my girl and I watch a lot of documentaries. I just find that documentaries are infinitely more entertaining than almost any scripted movie because it's real life. It's real people and real humanity. So we watched the Sign Painters documentary, and And somewhere in there, in the midst of all this, your work, and the font on your truck, or I'm sorry, it's not a font. It's not a font.
There you go.
The sign, the work you did on your truck was beautiful, and it's just in the background of your interview. Anyway, like it's so strong and bold that it kind of like it locked something in the back of my brain. It wasn't until a couple days later that I was listening to some mixes for our album, and the texture, the shiny, the black, and the strong, and the emblematic feel of your work, kind of made a connection with me to the music that I was listening to, that we had been working on.
Uh-huh.
And so I thought, well, I started to put together a pitch for the band because I'd already been in the spot where the other three guys in the band had an idea for the artwork that they all fully loved.
Uh-huh.
And for whatever reason, I wasn't seeing it or feeling it. So I had to kind of like try to convince them that this was the way to go, to do something with you or your art. And when I looked you up and found that you were actually in Texas and then in Denton, just like 30 minutes away from where we rehearsed,
uh-huh.
it all just made perfect sense. And I think that was one of the things that helped convince the band that it needed to happen. It just all fell right into place.
Awesome. Well, I like I said, I'm really I'm honored that you guys sought me out to do it. It was a really cool thing to work on. And Nathaniel Day, the filmmaker, is working on the final edits now of the kind of the behind the scenes making of the cover thing. So I'm kind of excited to see what he does with that.
Oh, I'd like to see that too.
Yeah.
Because how long did you spend working on that?
I think I think it was over 50 man hours, start to finish.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's not counting the design, so probably another, dozen hours or more in building out the design and concept and everything.
Well, we haven't actually talked about, could you tell me like what the, what was your actual approach to it? Like how, what does that style come from that you used on the cover of our album?
Well, what I was really shooting for was to combine something that looked like not only genuinely old, but had, all of the type style and the decorative elements and everything, to have all of that look legit, and at the same time try to capture Texas in all that. And so that's some of the textural stuff, like the wood background and that kind of thing, pulls in a little bit of the Texas. But I was just trying to, more than anything, I was trying to picture, like, if you came across this thing sitting in like the back of an old warehouse in downtown Dallas, and it was years ago part of the storefront or something, what would that look like? And that's what I tried to reproduce.
And that's really why I think it's so on point with the music, is because these are not new songs. These are old songs, that we have kind of dug up from 20 years ago,
mm-hmm.
and kind of like dusted them off and dressed them up. So, I really feel like the artwork for the cover is just absolutely perfect for what's inside.
Awesome. Well, I was really pleased with everyone's reaction. It's a crazy thing. I've been doing this over 25 years, and I'm still like this very childlike nervous wreck when I have to like show, the customer what I've done. So yeah, I was pretty nervous when you guys all came in the studio here in Denison to scope it out. Just like, what if they think it sucks? And
oh man, no way.
But definitely good reactions all the way around, so I felt good about it.
Oh yeah, and everything we've heard from people who've seen it, they really like it.
Cool, good deal.
It's going to look super cool when it's up on vinyl in the record store. It's really just going to like shout from the record stands.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that. That's for sure. So, well, this is cool. I know you're a busy dude and you got your whole touring thing, like you're in the thick of it right now. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to chat with me on my tiny little podcast.
Sean, we are so appreciative of you. I mean, that is a lot of work you put in for us. We're beside ourselves that you agreed to do it and turned in something so amazing for us. So whatever we can do to show our appreciation, repay you, we're happy to do.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you expressing that. Sometimes I think there's clients floating out there that, because they never reacted strongly, I'm still a little insecure about it. So it's always nice to hear, So.
Well, the album cover is amazing. Everybody loves it. Everybody, the band, like I said, that they had kind of been sold on another idea that they kind of came up with. And so to get that reaction from those guys, as rewarding as it was for you, it was also rewarding for me. It tells me that we did the right thing.
Well, good. I'm excited. I would love to be there for the official release party, but we've got this Ireland thing that's come up that got to go to because that's pretty amazing too. So.
Oh, that would be cool. What is it? That's in Limerick?
It's in Limerick, Ireland, and there'll be a group of us, a mix and match of American and Irish sign painters and some others from Europe who've now committed to coming, and they're going to screen the movie Sign Painters and have me do some kind of Q&A thing. I'm going to be doing podcast interviews over there, and they've teamed us up with the band The Cranberries, so I've designed a piece of artwork for them, and
cool.
A group of us are going to get together and execute the piece, which will be huge. So.
Oh, wow, you can execute it while you're there.
Yeah, so it'll be basically like a huge mural piece that I designed that we're all going to jump in and drink lots of Guinness and execute while we're there.
Oh, that's great. Well, then, you know what? I think we're going to be our plan is to do a formal Heretics show in Dallas later in the year or maybe early next year. So I'll keep in touch with you, and maybe we can have you down for that. I'd love to see you and Kaylee again.
Yeah, I would love that. That'd be cool.
All right. Well, we'll talk, as we get closer to the album release, and we'll stay in touch. But have a good trip. If I don't talk to you before your trip to Ireland. And thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm honored.
Thank you, Clark.
All right. Talk to you soon, Sean.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
So there we go. Thank you, Clark, for taking the time out of your busy tour schedule to be on my show, and appreciate you guys having me work on the album cover for your album. That's a pretty big honor, and I appreciate that a lot. So when you guys are looking for something to listen to in the month of September, look up Toadies' album Heretics and give it a spin. I think you'll enjoy it. So that's it for this week. Tune in next week. We'll be talking with another sign painter over in Ireland, someone we haven't interviewed before. So stay tuned for that. We'll see you next week.
Coffee with the Sign Painter is brought to you by the Big D Speed Shop in Dallas, Texas. You can find licensed apparel of Sean Starr's original designs at bigdspeedshop.com. The show is also brought to you by Full City Rooster Coffee Roasters, makers of the Sign Painter's Blend. Coffee that Sean drinks in the studio every day. Now shipping worldwide. FullCityRooster.com. Listening to Coffee with the Sign Painter, hosted by Sean Starr. You can find all sorts of info about the show and sign painting, including previous episodes, at our website, seanstarr.com.